Traditional sweet recipes from Malta, available online at www.traditionalmaltesweets.com. Traditional sweet recipes, creating a small slice of Malta that feels like home.
Għalġi moħra jena Marlin Xikluna inselmilkom u nilqakom għal dan il-programm bi produzzjoni mill-Belt ta' Melbourne. Il-programm tal-lum ser joħodna kemm fi New South Wales kif ukoll fil-Victoria. Ser niltaqgħu mal-awtriċi Deborah Abela u mal-awdjoloġista Franklin Kauki li tkellmu wkoll mal-aktar wrestler professjonali anzjan li kien hawn fl-Awstralja, George the Hitman Julio. Iżda qabel xejn, naslu wasla sa New South Wales, fejn il-kollega tiegħi Mark Avellino ser jitkellem mal-awtriċi Deborah Abela.
For those people that don't know, you are an author of children's books, but not just any children's book. You've got quite a array of stories that you tell. Would you like to tell us a little bit about how you got involved in writing?
Oh, I've always wanted to write, ever since I was a tiny kid, probably around the age of 7. That's when I thought, oh, I bet that would be a really great thing to do. So I'd been writing my stories ever since then. I went to uni and studied writing, and then I got a job. I actually studied teaching as well. And then I got a job working for a production house, working in television for a little while. And then that led to a job working in kids' telly. And that's when I thought, oh, I want to write for kids. And so far I think I've written 24 novels for kids. They've been about soccer, spies, lots of adventure, lots of feisty girl heroes. So it's been really fun.
I was reading a little bit about some of the work that you've done, and you had the fortunate, well, for a few soccer fans, fortunate thing to work with Johnny Warren on a whole series of books. How did that come about?
And that was amazing. So Johnny Warren, one of Australia's greatest, most legendary soccer players, he approached my publisher and said, I want to write a series of kids' books about soccer, but I don't really write, I don't know how to do it. So they approached me and said, would you like to work with Johnny Warren to write these series of soccer books? And I thought, oh my gosh, yes, I'd love to. So he and I met. I'd literally interview him and say, tell us the best moments, the lowest moments, tell us your, most favourite memories, funny stories, whatever. So he and I met a couple of times and he would just tell me stories. And then I kind of fashioned 3 novels in this series about a young kid called Jasper Zammit who dreams of being a soccer legend, pretty much just like Johnny Warren.
That's great. So, when you're kind of trying to write that character, and you're trying to write it with a male voice, what was that like for you to sort of try and do that, shift, I guess, from writing a female character?
Yeah, it was interesting because all my other books have had female lead characters, but they've always had best friends, they've always had brothers, or, they've always had dads or uncles. So it's just like finding that voice for that character. Who is that character? What makes them tick? What makes them happy and sad? And once you get that, the character's voice comes quite easily. But it was really fun writing a boy character as the lead. He has a best friend who's a girl, so and then there's bits of me in the girl and bits of Johnny, in fact, as a kid in the boy. So it was a really fun process.
You mentioned that your female characters tend to be feisty,
yes.
a little bit kind of I guess they're leaders in what they do. Are they always children? The
yes,
characters?
the main characters are always kids.
And so when you sort of are starting to sort of map out your stories, do you start with the idea first or the character first?
It depends on the book. So, for example, with Johnny Warren and the soccer books, Jasper Zammit, it began with the idea of soccer and who are the kids who are going to be in the soccer team, who's going to be their coach, their mums and dads, that kind of thing. So the story of soccer and the drama of soccer, in fact, was the thing that started that. I've written other books. I wrote a book called Grimston, which was it started with me being cranky about how we're not taking enough care of the planet, and then I flooded a whole city and added flying machines and sea monsters and girls who are good with swords. So it depends on the book. as to how it actually starts off.
You've just finished recently writing Teresa,
Yeah.
which has an autobiographical link to it.
Yeah.
Would you like to sort of just tell us a little bit about the story and about who Teresa was?
Yeah, Teresa, A New Australian is my latest book, and this is a really special book for me because my dad's mum was Nana Teresa, and so the book's dedicated to her. And it started with a story that I always knew about my dad. And I grew up in Australia, and I was born in a hospital, and I went to school. But my dad was born in a cave during the heavy bombing raids of World War II. And as a kid growing up in Australia, knowing that story, I just thought, wow, that's really remarkable, that's really interesting. Why were you born in a cave? What was going on? And so as I grew up and learnt the history of Malta and how brave the Maltese people were during those bombing raids of World War II, how they hid underground in the caves and the bomb shelters and the railway tunnels, and how they withstood the German attack for 3 whole years, I just thought, this is a perfect story for kids. It's got everything. It's got bravery. It's got, because after the war, of course, Malta's in a really bad state. And that's when Australia says, why don't you come and live here and pay your £10 and bring your whole family here? So it's about loss. It's about new beginnings. It's about Teresa, the main character, then trying to fit into Australia at a time when Australia was in the middle of the White Australia policy, and they weren't always welcoming of people who looked different. And my dad was called names, and wasn't treated very well all the time. And I wanted to tell that story to kids too, because a lot of kids too know what it's like to be bullied because you're different. And I know this story happened a long time before they were born, but kids will read this book and go, oh my gosh, that happened to me, or I know exactly how she feels. And again, it's about linking in to those kids who are reading, even though it's a story from many years ago.
And is it a story that's made up completely from family history, or?
So my family history, definitely, but I got one of the most fun things about this book was I got to interview a lot of Maltese people in their 70s and 80s, and they recalled the stories of what it was like either to hide from the bombing or on the ship on the way to Australia, or what it was like their first day at school in Australia. And so they told me these amazing stories, and then I kind of sewed all of that together. And so Teresa really is a fictional character that just borrows from these true stories of people who did migrate here after the war.
So weirdly, those people that are in their 70s and 80s were probably in their teens or younger.
Yeah.
So in a funny way, if they were to read this, they would probably recognise elements of themselves in there, perhaps.
Yeah, and that's been the really nice thing about it, because I write kids' books. Usually the only adults who read my books are librarians or teachers. But with Teresa, I've had so many older Maltese people read it and say to me, thank you so much, this is my story. And I didn't think anyone would be interested in it. So thank you for being interested in and wanting to tell my story. And of course, I'll just write back and say, this is an incredible story. And I want Maltese kids to know it, and I want Australian kids to know it.
And your family, so have they read the book now,
Yes. Yeah. And they all almost feel the same way too. Wow, someone's telling our story. And of course my reaction is, of course they're telling our story. It's a great, great story. And the lovely thing is too, it's going to be released in Malta in October. In Maltese, and so it's going to be translated for kids and adults, of course, in Malta, to be able to read that story of their history, and then what happens when a lot of the Maltese people had to leave and go to a country that was miles and miles away that they knew very little of. So I'm really, really proud of that, because I just can't wait to go to Malta and talk to Maltese kids and adults about it.
Because I guess that would have been something you would never imagined, that one of your books would get translated into Maltese out of all things.
Part of me wishes I could go back and tell my 7-year-old self, you know what, one day you are going to go to Malta to launch a book in Maltese, and my 7-year-old little self would have been so excited. So I'm really, really proud. I'm so excited about it.